Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about how to do easy texture work for realistic looking textures inside of Blender itself. This is a very simple way, so beginners can do it. Before we start, I just want to mention that we're doing a channel contest, so the link to that video is on the top right of the screen and in the description below. Make sure you go check that out, but anyways, let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, we're on TextureHaven.com. This is the site I use to download all my materials, so we just want to come up to the Textures tab, and then I went ahead and downloaded this material right here, the arrow rocks, and then come up here and then I'm just searched up bark, and then we're going to use this brown bark brown 01 texture right here. To download the textures, all you want to do is just click on the image and then go to the all maps section up here, and then usually you can do either JPEG or PNG. PNG will be higher quality, but it does take up more space, so I always do the 8K PNG. Next, we're going to go ahead and download a HDRI. We can come up here to HDRIhaven. They are owned by the same people, and so they are really good. Again, you just want to come up here to the HDRIs tab, and then I went ahead and downloaded this Canon one right here. Just come all the way down, and I went ahead and just downloaded the 4K. So with those now in our downloads folder, I'm going to come over here to where I want all my files to be, and come over and create a new file. I'm going to name this bark. And then another new file, I'm going to name this rock, and then just going to open up the rock file, and then you want to make sure you have WinRAR or 7-zip downloaded, so we can just go ahead and double click that. It'll open it in WinRAR. This is what I'm using. So you just want to take all these files and dump them in the rock folder, and then do the same with the bark brown. Now that we have the bark and the rock textures in, we're going to go ahead and drag this HDRI we downloaded over here. And now we can go ahead and open up Blender at the bottom. Now you do want to make sure that you are on the most recent version of Blender. For me, that's 2.9, but any version after that should be fine as well. Going to click out of that. We're going to go up to the render properties. Going to set it to cycles. GPU compute, turn on adaptive sampling, and in the denoising tab we're going to turn on viewport denoising. Also coming down, we're going to turn the film transparent to on, and then also in the performance, since I'm rendering on a GPU, I'm going to go ahead and set that to 512. This just speeds up the render times. Okay, so now in our actual scene, I'm going to go ahead and delete the default cube like that, and then Shift A to add in a plane. Let me go ahead and turn on the shortcuts so you guys can see that in the bottom right here. But now I'm going to press S to scale it up just so we can view it a little bit better. And now we're actually going to do some of the texture work itself. So let's go to the shading tab up here, and first I want to load in that HDRI we had downloaded from HDRIhaven. So come over here, click on a world, and then I'm just gonna Shift A to add an environment texture like this. Go and plug the color up to the background color, and then we're just gonna go ahead and hit open, and then navigate to wherever you downloaded that image at. This is the image right here, and just open image like that. And so now we should see, if we go to render view, that we actually have lighting in our scene. Okay, so now let's actually do some texture work itself. We're going to come back down to where it says world and make sure it's on object with our plane selected right here. And we're just going to go ahead and add a new material. I'm going to call that rock, like that. And now I actually have a add-on called the Node Wrangler add-on. To install it, all you want to do is come up to Edit, Preferences, and it comes default with Blender. You just want to type that in and then make sure it is checked right here. And so now with the principal BSDF selected, we can hold Control Shift and then T, and it'll open up this little menu, and we just want to navigate to wherever we have our materials downloaded. I want to go into the rock section and then press A to select all the images, and then we can go to principal texture setup. So now if we take a look at the bottom, we can see that Blender automatically added all these nodes to our setup like this. It's a very easy way to do some quick texture work. So now that we have this, we can see that in the top we have our texture, but it's looking kind of flat. It still has all the maps on it. We have the normal map, the roughness map, and the color map right there, and then also at the bottom this displacement map. This will come in useful in a little bit, but as we can see up here, all of those are displayed. It's doing very nice lighting, and so if you don't really have that intensive of a object, like you don't really need the actual shape of it, such as like bricks on a wall or anything like that, you can actually just leave it like this and the texture is correct like that. But if you actually have rocks or something like that, which you want to be bumpy and to actually follow the rocks itself, a way we can change that is to come over here to the material properties, and then scrolling all the way down till we get to the settings tab. In the settings tab, you'll see a displacement we want to change that to displacement only, and you can kind of notice that the actual plane is not on the geometry itself anymore, and that is because we actually have this displacement node down here, so that is what it's affecting. But since we don't really have that many geometry, we only have 4 vertices like that, it's just pushing the whole plane down. And so a way to change that is to actually come up here to the modifiers tab. We're going to go ahead and add a subdivision surface modifier, and you can see that that's kind of added a little bit of geometry to our actual mesh. I'm going to make it simple just so it retains the edges like that, and then we can just increase the amount like that. You will notice that there is not that much geometry that it added. So a new feature in Blender is to actually have adaptive subdivision. Basically, it'll subdivide the plane to where the closer edges have more subdivisions and the further edges don't have as many. And so to enable that, we're going to come over to the render properties, make the feature set to experimental. And then now if we come back to the modifier properties, we have this option called adaptive subdivision, and you'll notice that we get a lot more geometry and it looks much better. You will notice, however, that the actual rocks and stuff are very high up, and so if you don't like that, if it's giving you weird issues like that, you can actually come down here to this displacement node and then set the scale down. Usually I stick around a 0.3 or a 0.4, just whatever texture you have, just play around with that setting until it looks good. So I did a quick render of this rock material, and as you can see, this is the result. It looks very good for us only spending about a minute doing some texture work. Of course, you can dial this in some more and maybe smooth it out a little bit more, but this is a really good result. I do want to quickly notice that this rock texture is saved into our actual blend file, and so if I go ahead and delete this, and then let's say we want to add this to a UV sphere, we can just add the sphere like that and shading smooth. And then come down here and hit rock, and it gives it that same rock material. And then one final step, if there's not that much geometry, you can come over back to the modifier tab and then add that subdivision surface, adaptive subdivision again, and you should get more geometry. Okay, now let's do this setup again and play around with a little more settings. So let's go ahead and delete this sphere, and then we're going to go ahead and add in a cylinder like this. I'm going to go into camera view by hitting the 0 on my numpad, and then kind of just scaling this up on the Z, just so we have a nice little tree trunk like this. This is what we're going to make next. So now I'm going to come down here to new, add a new material. I'm going to name this bark like this. And then coming up here, we'll see that we have the principal BSDF. I'm going to click on that, and again hold Control Shift T to add in our textures. I'm going to come to the bark section, hit A to add all of them, and then hit the principal texture setup like this. It'll take a little bit to load at the top, but once it does, we should see the actual image on there, but there is no displacement. Again, this is just the default thing, so if you weren't very close up on the tree, I wouldn't recommend doing the displacement, but if you were, like we are, very close to the tree, we want that actual geometry on the tree itself. This part right here should be sticking out, and so let's actually do that right now. So again, we want to come to the material properties down here at the settings section. We're going to change the displacement to displacement only. You can also do displacement and bump, but for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to just do displacement only. And then come up to the render properties. You want to make sure that you're on the experimental again, and then you can add a quick subdivision surface modifier. I like to keep it on simple just for this adaptive sampling, and then make sure that that is turned on. And so now we have a lot more geometry. You can actually see this part is extruding out a bit and everything. It is a little too much, and so I'm going to come down to this displacement node again. I'm going to change that around, and you will notice that the actual shape sticks around the original, but if you find for some reason yours is off, you can play around with this mid-level setting and set it to be skinnier or bigger, but for the sake of mine was fine, so I'm just going to leave it at 0.5. Now let's take a look at the other settings that it created. We can see that we have the roughness texture plugged into the roughness, the specular into the specular, and then the normal plugged into a bump node that is plugged into the normal texture right here. If for any reason you don't like the way it looks, what I find you can change around is to actually add in a color ramp node. And you can do that in between these nodes like that, and you can really dial in the roughness however you like. You can also shift control click to view the actual changes you're making. And so if I wanted the roughness to be a little more, let's say a little more black, we can really dial that in like that, so we have a lot more roughness now. So let's view what that looks like. So yeah, it just basically highlighted the shadows a little bit more, but for the sake of mine it was fine, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete this and make sure the color is plugged into the roughness. Here I rendered out the bark a little bit, and so we can actually see the final result, and it is looking pretty good. I might want to decrease the actual scale of the displacement because some of these edges are looking a little pixelated, but I think that is a good result for the amount of time that we spent. Again, if you are doing further away objects with this tree, I wouldn't recommend doing the displacement just because that'll eat up on your render time and everything. Basically, the closer you are to the camera, the more detailed you want it. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this tutorial. Make sure you guys like and subscribe for more amazing tutorials like this. But we also have a Patreon and a Discord. Links to those can be found in the description below. If you guys have any other tutorial ideas, please leave them in the comment section below. But anyway, guys, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys later. Peace.